We ask you some questions and or comments. Does everybody understand plan change that we started back in the last training, which is going through now, the appeal process? Changes 28 to 33. I think we probably all do. Councillor Downard?
I suppose, Nick, my only question would be, obviously you've got submissions in and you feel as though you need more expert witnesses. Is that why it's jumped up 300%?
Correct. The expert witness costs are an element that we don't budget for, principally because there are big uncertainties around timing, when we will actually need to put them in place, and big uncertainties around scope. You can jump from a simple plan change where you get very few issues through the public submission process to what we've got in this situation, which is quite a complex suite of 6 of them, which have got a lot of interconnected issues, particularly around the retail distribution issues. So that's why we've got to the point where we've sat around, looked at the submissions, we've talked to the expert team which we've engaged, and they've identified that there's actually quite a depth of analysis and evidence that's required.
Have we tried to push too hard with this plan change 2833?
Not at all. But what I'd suggest is that, firstly, as proposers of the plan change, the burden falls on the council to actually show that they are of value and that they are better than the current situation. Secondly, what we've taken is, I guess we've taken a risk management approach in terms of these plan changes. There's a council hearing, which we're preparing for at the moment, and that kicks off in May, 21st of May. And then flowing out of that council hearing, there's the potential for appeals to the Environment Court. One approach is to put your money and time and effort into the council hearing, and therefore you deal with most of the issues and you really limit the scope of the appeals potentially to the Environment Court. What used to happen in the good old days is that, and you particularly saw this in resource consent situations, an applicant would do a once-over lightly on the council hearing and save all their powder and money and effort for the Environment Court. The government recognised that that wasn't a good way to do planning. It wasn't very efficient, and as a result they changed the Resource Management Act and inserted section 290A, which now means the court, when they're looking at appeals, have to give consideration, and there's recent High Court evidence, High Court decision, where they talk about giving quite a lot of weight to the fact that the council's made a decision. What that means is that the best way for us to manage the risks around this process is to put forward a good, strong case at the council level. Once we get a good decision, it means that 80% of the work's done in terms of any Environment Court appeals. It also means the number and the scope of those appeals will be significantly reduced. So that's why we're proposing to put forward a very strong case in terms of the council hearing.
And you feel you have a strong case?
We feel we have a very strong case.
Anything further from any councillors? Because you're being asked to approve $150,000 unbudgeted operational costs.
If we were to go the other track and not spend the money up front, what's the quantifiable risk for ending up in the Environment Court cost-wise? I know that's a bit of a difficult one to put a figure on, but is there some sort of scope you can give us?
It's nigh on impossible to put a figure on, I would suggest. The scale of evidence and the analysis which you're required to provide at the Environment Court is a step up from a council hearing. The advantage we've got is that we've got a really good solid base of groundwork that we did as part of the Taupo Urban Commercial Industrial Structure Plan. That's allowed us quite a solid platform to move on to the council hearings. In some respects, it would be a shame to go backwards by presenting a weak case at the council hearings, particularly given, as I say, the changes to the legislation and the case law from the High Court.
So, just a question, if it's costing us much is it costing us to defend this?
All up,
50 plus 150, yeah.
all up, we're probably looking at about 350,000 with the commissioner costs.
How much is it costing the appellants?
The appellants can choose. They can choose the value of the effort they put in. So, for example, a submitter in the residential area who may have a particular issue with part of the plan change may just turn up themselves and give some evidence.
Do we know at this stage what we're being appealed against?
We do.
Okay,
And
so just give us a bit of an overview. Are these people having to pay 250 odd grand to challenge this as well?
some will pay no money at all, and they're the people who will put a submission in and turn up and come along to the hearings committee and say, we don't think this is a good idea for these reasons. At the other end of the spectrum, we have the likes of Foodstuffs, the National Trading Company, Progressives, who will turn up with a suite of expert witnesses and lawyers, and they will potentially spend hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So are we allowed to have a bit of an overview of a read of their appeal grounds at the moment? I mean, I'm sitting here as mayor saying, well, why are Progressive Enterprises, just to use a word, first I knew it was them, but if it's them, that's fine. We're in an open meeting. So why are Progressive Enterprises challenging us?
It's not, Mr. Chairman, I think it's not appeals. This is through the council hearing, so it's only submissions. So it's you've put out a piece of policy, and these various people are saying we like this bit, we don't like that bit. The key that Mr. Carroll's trying to, or the point that Mr. Carroll's trying to make is that as the proponent of that plan change, e.g. as it's your plan change, you need to provide a case so that the commissioners who will be sitting at these desks can make a decision based on the evidence which is in front of them to the best ground. Now, if you don't do this, by the time you get to the Environment Court, because we're going to be in the Environment Court anyway, probably, but by the time you get there, you're going to spend double, triple that money, and you might actually be defending a position that you don't want. So all the money that you spent previously has been a waste of time. On top of that, I guess when you look at the intent of these plan changes, there's two parts, if you remember back to the plan change. One part is in terms of the town centre and doing those improvements, height and all that stuff. The other part is in terms of your land. So when you think of this from a land development perspective, protecting your asset, $200,000 here to protect your asset, to put it quite crudely, is pretty small.
But isn't one of the concerns, I think, is that we've moved the boundaries to the town centre, and the properties like in Kaunihera and those places up there, we put restrictions on for those properties to be turned into office blocks, didn't we? Is that where some of the...
Through you, Your Worship, there, as I say, it's a very complex suite of 6 plan changes. There are a whole range of issues. One of the issues that was sitting in there was around the boundaries of the town centre. Through the structure plan and through the plan changes, Council signalled that it's not changing the boundaries of the town centre at all. One of the elements which has been expressed through the plan changes, Plan Change 30, is that we want to have a closer look at the nature and particularly the scale of retail and office activity that takes place in all the residential areas. So it's not just a particular area next to town centre. It's not to say it can't happen. It's just to say, let's have a look at it if it starts to get big.
Well, I'm not going to mention it, but I went to an office in Henry Hill Road yesterday on private personal business where 5 people are working out of a house. It's not just Kaingaroa Street.
No. I think it's wider than that, yeah.
Okay, well, we're really between a rock and a hard place. I mean, maybe that's not the word for it, but there is no option, really, is there? Councillor Dunner?
Moving it, yep.
So, seconded by Councillor Johnson. All those in favour? Aye. Okay, moving now to